One that I wanted to get to is the Formula of Hormisdas. Can you properly and historically situate this for us? Tell us a little bit about some of its claims, especially in relation to um, equating unity with Rome to being unity with the Catholic
Mm,
Church, and
hmm
then tell us about some of the responses that Orthodox apologists offer to the Formula of Hormisdas.
Yeah, yeah. So the Formula of Hormisdas, it was basically an answer to uh, emperors in the East who were basically fed up with the disunity in the church. And they wanted the Eastern churches to return into communion with the Roman See. And so this is following Chalcedon and the aftermath of fifth century Christological disputes that really broke apart the East. Um, and which is interesting because the fourth century was marked by Christological debates in the East, breaking things up. Like Jerome, when he writes to Damasus, he says the
You're muted. You said when Jerome was writing to Damasus, and
sorry,
you got muted
yeah,
there. Yeah.
sorry, yeah, yeah. When Jerome was writing to Damasus, he spoke about how the East was broken into pieces because of the
Mhm.
issue of the hypostases and the ousia. Um, and
Right.
then in the fifth century, you have the same thing. This is problem of understanding how to envision Christ's the Christology in light of his divinity,
Mhm.
and it wrecked the church in the East. You had this division between those who held Chalcedon and those who didn't. Well, the emperors decided, okay, we need to ask Rome for how to clean this up
Mhm.
and go along with what Rome instructs us to do. So that task fell into the hands of Pope Anastasius, and at the end of the fifth century, um, Pope Simplicius, and it really starts under Galasius when he was basically like the secretary at Rome, but it wasn't until the beginning of the sixth century, 515, where Pope Hormisdas basically wrote a formula that, and it's interesting. It's not just like, hey, you will believe all these things.
Mhm.
He actually wrote it in such a way that it would be a statement from them to
Mhm.
him.
Mhm.
So it was a libellus, basically stating the terms of communion. Just by doing that, you're giving this idea that you're in a position to make binding requirements.
Mhm.
You're not only giving the conditions, you're
Mhm.
also writing it out for them, and they have to sign it as if they're saying it to the Apostolic See. And in that document, you have a bold claim from Matthew 16 to the primacy of the Roman See from the promise of Christ to St. Peter, that the Apostolic See um, is that the Catholic religion, the tradition of the apostles, has never been uh, it's always been unsullied
Mhm.
from error, right?
Mhm.
And then it goes on to say that, Leo and Chalcedon have to be confessed as true. Not just Leo, but all the letters of Leo that he wrote on the Catholic religion. And that what all the popes have said in the past has been right. And they had to anathematize certain names. They had to anathematize Acacius. Um, they had to anathematize other predecessors to John that went along with the cases, or at least they seemed to go along with the cases. And so this was a bold claim to papal infallibility resting upon a scriptural foundation in Matthew 16. Um, Again, that's par for the course at Rome. Um, so this gets sent to the East through legates. One of those legates is Saint Ennodius of Pavia, the guy that is responsible for being one of the first authors to talk about the immunity of the Roman pontiff from judgment for sinful behavior. Legates get sent to the east, including Saint Enodius, and they're able to acquire all kinds of signatures in Constantinople. Um, I have the English translation of a number of the exchanges between Emperor Justin and his nephew Justinian with Pope Hormisdas. Um, and the legates at Rome said that they were very successful in getting lots of signatures in the East. But what ended up happening is that not everybody could follow along with the dictates that Hormisdas put out in his formula, because they thought that they could not excommunicate every single bishop that was outwardly in communion with Acacius, because some of those bishops didn't agree with the Hinodicon, but they were under duress, or that they held to Chalcedon the whole time, and that it would be against their conscience to condemn them um, posthumously, now them being in the grave. And so Justinian initially applied some force. He's like, no, this is what the Pope said. This is what you have to do. And the messengers just kept coming back to Constantinople saying, look, these people are willing to die. They're not going to do this. So what Emperor Justin did was he wrote back to the Pope Hormisdas and said, look, they all want to sign, but they cannot remove the names of certain people from their diptychs with good conscience. And no matter what threats are being used, no matter what coercion is being used, they won't do it. And the Pope initially just said, just keep doing that. So you got a little bit of, stubbornness on the
Mm.
part of Rome on this part. But then Justinian stepped in, and Justinian was more persuasive to Hormisdas. And Hormisdas finally said, you know what? All right. You guys can fudge the names, except for Acacius, um, and the removal of Macedonius and another name from the venerable names. But Acacius has to be, removed from the diptychs and anathematized. But the other names, suffice it to say, as long as they agree with everything else in the tome or in the formula, they can send in their own libellus and hand it into Constantinople, um, and that would suffice to for them to enter into communion with the Holy See. And so that ended the episode. What Orthodox people like to do is they like to retell a story based off of the Eastern voices that couldn't sign the original. And so here's where quite a vast imagination kicks in. The story kind of goes like this, and I'm sure they won't like me describing it this way, but this is kind of what they're saying. The Eastern bishops saw the papal infallible claims, and they're like, no way we can believe in this heretical nonsense. And so we're not going to sign this original one. Tell them we'll sign a different one of our own, which is not going to have papal infallibility in it or any of the papal claims in it. And if he accepts that, then we'll enter into communion with Rome. And that seems to be the, like, how that you have that what's that game, the telephone game, where you whisper into an ear and at the end it comes out like totally opposite. Well, you've
The
got these,
telephone game. Yeah.
yeah, telephone game. You got these Orthodox polemicists who try to concoct this story. I don't see it in any of the scholars of the Orthodox world. But you get Orthodox polemicists who bring this up, and then through the telephone game on the internet, you get this idea that I've even heard an article called the Sham of the Formula of Hormisdas, where the Easterners basically got the victory in the end and completely denied the papacy. Well, as I was saying, none of the Eastern bishops made a peep about the papal claims. And even if they did have a problem with it and voiced their problem on other matters, that looks really bad on them. It looks really bad on them to enter into communion with Rome while they know that Rome holds to papal heresies just because the Pope is agreeable to other conditions.
Hmm.
I mean, that's kind of like the same thing they complain about today, where you've got the false unity, this unity of outward communion without the equality of faith. Well, this whole imagination about the sham of the Formula of Hormisdas really plays upon this will of the Byzantines or the Easterners to enter into a false unity with papal heresy, as long as they don't have to sign on to the papal heresies themselves. And that's just, it's mythology.
Hmm.
It's a complete myth. Even we've already cited him before, but he's worth mentioning again. And you've brought this up to your audience a few times. Father Alexander Schmemann even admitted that this was accepted by the East without contest. Even Father Meyendorff, who's normally not disposed to admit this, even he says that it's seen as a victory for Rome. Um, Rome was very clear about its beliefs. You know, there was no obscurity or ambiguity at this point in time in Rome. The publicity there was all the same.
Hmm.
And the Easterners knew what they were joining when they signed that formula. So, and to this day, the Coptic and Syriac communities, they all see it as what it was, a submission to the papal throne. And they, they think, they look back and see it as an act of betrayal on the part of their Eastern brethren who signed the formula. But yeah, so that's what you hear from Orthodox apologists today. There's so much more to be said, but that's kind of like the summary.
Oh, wait, before you go, I would really appreciate it if you would consider supporting this channel. This is my primary means to provide for my family, and it also helps me to produce content like this video. If you would like to support me, become a patron by visiting patreon.com/reason and theology. You'll also get access to extra exclusive content when you become a patron. Lastly, hit that like button and the subscribe button, and be sure to leave a comment down below. God bless.